Admiral Krex of the Galactic Coalition had exactly 3 brain cells, and 2 of them were currently fighting over who got to take the day off. The third one was busy trying to remember how to breathe, which honestly was probably the most important job of the bunch. Standing in the pristine white command center of the Coalition flagship Inevitable Justice, Krex examined the holographic display showing a small blue planet with all the enthusiasm of someone reading tax forms. Earth. Third rock from a mediocre star. A population, roughly 8 billion of what the Coalition's xenobiology department had classified as bipedal primates with delusions of intelligence. "Sir," squeaked Lieutenant Vorp, a being that looked like a cross between a mushroom and a filing cabinet. "The tribunal has reached its decision regarding the Earth infractions." Krex didn't look up from his meditation crystals. The Coalition had a very strict policy about meditation crystals. Every officer was required to stare at them for at least 30 minutes per day, which was supposed to promote inner peace and cosmic awareness. Mostly it just gave everyone headaches. It made important decisions take twice as long. "Infractions?" Krex asked, still not looking up. "Remind me again what these primitives did that was so terrible." Vorp consulted his datapad, which made a series of beeps that sounded suspiciously like it was having an existential crisis. "Well, sir, they've been broadcasting electromagnetic signals into space without proper permits. They've also been sending primitive spacecraft beyond their planetary boundaries without filing the appropriate paperwork with the Department of Cosmic Travel Regulations." "The horror," Krex said flatly. "Anything else?" "They've also been conducting nuclear experiments and testing ballistic missiles. The tribunal considers this a clear violation of the Primitive Species Non-Aggression Accord, subsection 47. Paragraph 93, Clause 18.2. Krex finally looked up from his crystals. "You know what, Vorp, I've had just about enough of these backwater species thinking they can do whatever they want without consequences. Time to make an example." Down on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison was having the kind of day that made him seriously consider updating his resume and applying for a nice, quiet job in accounting. Jake ran the Global Defense Coordination Center, which was basically a fancy name for the place where humans keep all their really big weapons and try to pretend they know what they're doing. Jake had been in the military for 15 years, had 3 degrees in aerospace engineering, and possessed what his ex-wife had called an unhealthy relationship with sarcasm. Right now he was staring at a communication screen that was displaying the most ridiculous thing he'd seen since Congress tried to pass a bill declaring pizza a vegetable. "Let me get this straight," Jake said to the screen, which was showing Admiral Krex's face in all its bureaucratic glory. "You're declaring war on Earth because we didn't fill out the proper forms before launching satellites. The Galactic Coalition does not recognize your species' right to expand beyond your planetary boundaries without proper documentation," Krex announced with all the authority of someone who had never been punched in the face but probably deserved it. "Furthermore, your electromagnetic transmissions are causing significant interference with our meditation frequency networks." Jake blinked. "You're what now?" "We are dispatching a fleet of 847 warships to your location. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally or face complete annihilation. The Coalition wishes to remind you that resistance is not only futile, but also requires filing Form 2847B in triplicate." The screen went dark. Jake stared at it for a long moment, then slowly turned to face the dozen or so technicians and officers who had gathered to watch the transmission. They were all looking at him with expressions that ranged from mild concern to barely contained panic. "Well," Jake said finally, "that's new." Admiral Krex leaned back in his command chair and smiled, which was a disturbing sight since his species had evolved from carnivorous space slugs and had way too many teeth. 847 warships represented the largest Coalition fleet ever assembled. It was enough firepower to crack a planet in half, assuming the planet wasn't fighting back very hard. "Estimated time to target?" he asked. 18 hours, sir," replied Commander Glubb, whose name was actually an untranslatable sound that resembled someone gargling underwater. "The Earth primitives show no signs of preparation for battle. Our intelligence suggests they possess only the most basic nuclear technology and primitive chemical rockets." Krex nodded approvingly. "Perfect. This should be over in minutes. Maybe we'll be back in time for the Coalition's annual meditation retreat." What Admiral Krex didn't know And what the Coalition's intelligence department had somehow managed to miss despite having literally thousands of years of experience in galactic affairs, it was that humans had a very special talent. They were really, really good at reverse engineering things that fell out of the sky. Jake Morrison had seen a lot of weird things in his 15 years of military service. He'd seen pilots try to land helicopters upside down, watched engineers attempt to build bridges out of chocolate, and once witnessed an entire battalion get lost in a parking lot for 6 hours. But this was definitely in the top 5. So let me understand this correctly, Jake said, rubbing his temples in a way that suggested he was developing a migraine that would probably last until retirement. 847 alien warships are heading toward Earth because we didn't ask permission before launching the Weather Channel satellite. That's essentially correct, sir, replied Dr. Emily Vasquez, who was either the smartest person Jake had ever met or completely insane. Possibly both. Emily ran the Theoretical Weapons Division, which was a department that officially didn't exist and unofficially had a budget larger than most small countries. Emily was the kind of scientist who looked at the laws of physics and treated them more like helpful suggestions. She had 17 patents that were classified so far above top secret that even the people who classified them weren't allowed to know what they were for. The good news, Emily continued, is that we've been expecting something like this for about 20 years. Jake stared at her. We've been expecting an alien invasion. Not exactly an invasion. More like a strongly worded letter backed up by overwhelming military force. The Xenosociology department predicted that any galactic government would probably be a bureaucratic nightmare staffed by beings with the collective intelligence of a particularly slow houseplant. We have a Xenosociology department. We have lots of departments you don't know about, Jake. The point is, we've been preparing for this scenario since we started reverse engineering the technology from all those UFO crashes in the 50s. And Commander Rex Boulder chose that moment to burst through the door with all the subtlety of a caffeinated rhinoceros. Rex was 6 feet 4 inches of pure military enthusiasm wrapped in a uniform that looked like it had been pressed with a steam roller. He was the kind of officer who said things like hua unironically and thought that every problem could be solved with either more explosives or better planning. Usually both. Captain Morrison, sir, Rex bellowed, snapping to attention so sharply that nearby windows rattled. I've just finished reviewing our defensive capabilities, and I have to say, this is going to be the most fun we've had since the Joint Chiefs tried to invade Canada as a training exercise. Rex, Jake said slowly, please tell me you're not excited about the prospect of fighting 800 alien warships. Sir, with all due respect, I am incredibly excited about fighting 800 alien warships. Do you know how long it's been since we've had a proper enemy? The last 3 conflicts were against countries that surrendered before we even finished loading the good ammunition. Dr. Vasquez cleared her throat. Actually, Rex, it's 847 warships. Rex's eyes lit up like a child on Christmas morning. Even better. Sir, permission to begin preparations for Operation Cosmic Smackdown. We are not calling it Operation Cosmic Smackdown, Jake said firmly. Operation Galactic Beatdown? No. Basto, Operation Space Wedgie? Absolutely not. Emily leaned forward. Jake, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Which elephant? The one where we're about to be invaded by aliens, or the one where Rex apparently has a whole filing cabinet full of ridiculous operation names? The one where we've been secretly building weapons that violate several international treaties and probably a few laws of physics. Jake felt his migraine getting worse. How many laws of physics? Well, let's just say that if Newton's ghost ever finds out what we've been up to, he's going to be very disappointed. Rex was practically bouncing with excitement. Sir, you should see what we've done with the old ITBM silos. We've converted them into something the engineering department calls kinetic energy delivery systems, but I like to call them alien ship-go boom tubes. Rex, please tell me you didn't actually call them that in the official documentation. Of course not, sir. In the official documentation they're called extraterrestrial hostility neutralization devices, and much more professional. Emily pulled up a holographic display that showed Earth's defensive installations. To Jake's surprise, there were a lot more dots on the map than he remembered authorizing. Jake, over the past 2 decades, We've been very quietly building a defense network that makes the old Strategic Defense Initiative look like a slingshot. We've got orbital platforms, ground-based energy weapons, and a few things that don't technically exist yet, but probably will by the time we need them. How is that possible? Turns out that when you give scientists unlimited funding and tell them to build weapons to fight hypothetical aliens, they get really creative. Also, we may have been slightly less than completely honest about what some of those NASA launches were actually carrying. Jake looked at the display again. How many satellites do we actually have up there? That depends on how you define satellite, Emily said. If you mean objects in orbit around Earth, then about 3,000. If you mean objects in orbit around Earth that aren't secretly weapons platforms disguised as weather monitoring equipment, then maybe 50. Rex grinned. Sir, I think it's time to show these aliens why you don't mess with a species that invented nuclear weapons just to see what would happen. Admiral Krex was having what he considered to be a very productive day. He'd successfully meditated for the required 30 minutes, filed 17 different forms related to the upcoming Earth operation, and hadn't accidentally declared war on any additional planets. By Coalition standards, this was practically a performance review worthy of a promotion. The Coalition fleet was now just 6 hours away from Earth, and Krex was feeling confident. The intelligence reports on human military capabilities were exactly what he'd expected from a species that had only recently figured out how to split atoms without accidentally destroying themselves. Commander Glubb, Krex called out, "What's the latest assessment of Earth's defensive capabilities?" Glubb consulted his datapad, which was making slightly less distressed beeping sounds than usual. "Sir, our long-range sensors indicate that the humans have approximately 15,000 nuclear weapons, several hundred primitive aircraft, and what appears to be a space station made mostly of spare parts and good intentions." "Pathetic," Krex said, examining his meditation crystals again. "What about their space-based defenses? They appear to have several dozen satellites in orbit, sir. Most of them seem to be for communications and weather monitoring. Nothing that could pose a threat to our shields." What Commander Glubb didn't know, because the Coalition's sensor technology had been designed by the same committee that had approved the meditation crystal requirement, was that human stealth technology had progressed significantly beyond what anyone expected. The Coalition's sensors were excellent at detecting large, obvious threats. They were considerably less effective at identifying threats that were specifically designed not to be detected. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison was standing in the Global Defense Coordination Center's main control room, watching as hundreds of technicians prepared for what was either going to be humanity's finest hour or a really spectacular way to get wiped out. "Status report," Jake called out. "All orbital platforms are online and ready," reported Lieutenant Lisa Park, who was young enough to think this was exciting rather than terrifying. "The kinetic bombardment systems are charged and targeted. The energy weapons are operating at full capacity. Oh, and the experimental stuff that Dr. Vasquez built is making weird humming sounds, but she says that's normal." Jake turned to Dr. Vasquez. "Please tell me the weird humming sounds are normal." "Completely normal," Emily said. "Well, normal for weapons that technically shouldn't exist yet. The quantum destabilization arrays always hum when they're warming up. It's like a tea kettle, but for destroying things at the molecular level. That's not reassuring. Jake, you need to understand something about the weapons we've built. We didn't just reverse engineer alien technology, we improved it. We took their designs and asked ourselves one simple question: how can we make this more destructive?" And Commander Rex Boulder appeared at Jake's shoulder, grinning like a maniac. "Sir, I've just received confirmation that Zara Quinn is in position with the experimental fighter squadron." Zara Quinn was either the best pilot in human history or completely insane. Jake had never been able to decide which. She was 28 years old, had reflexes that bordered on superhuman, and an attitude that made Wolverine seem cuddly by comparison. "Where exactly is she positioned?" Jake asked. "About 50,000 kilometers out, sir, in the new stealth fighters that officially don't exist. She's been watching the alien fleet for the past 2 hours and sending back reconnaissance data." Jake's communication console chimed. "Captain Morrison, this is Quinn. I'm looking at the biggest collection of ugly spaceships I've ever seen. These things look like someone took a bunch of kitchen appliances and welded them together in the dark. Quinn, maintain radio silence, unless you have something important to report. Sir, I think this qualifies as important. These alien ships have energy signatures that match the crashed vessels we've been studying. Their weapon systems are using the same basic principles as the defensive systems we've been building. Emily looked up from her console. Jake, that's actually very good news. How is that good news? Because it means our weapons are specifically designed to counter their technology. It's like they're bringing swords to a gunfight, except the swords are made of the same material as our bullets. Admiral Krex was reviewing the final attack plan when his communications officer, a being that looked like a cross between a starfish and a filing cabinet, approached with what appeared to be urgent news. Sir, we're receiving some unusual readings from the Earth system. What kind of readings? Well, sir, our sensors are detecting what appear to be several thousand additional objects in Earth orbit. They seem to have appeared quite suddenly. Krex frowned, which was particularly disturbing because his species frowned with their entire face, including parts that probably shouldn't move, appeared suddenly. That's impossible. Objects don't just appear in space. That's what I thought too, sir. But our tactical analysis suggests that these objects may have been there all along, and our sensors simply weren't calibrated to detect them. You're telling me that our state-of-the-art sensor arrays, the same ones that can detect a meditation crystal from 3 light-years away, somehow missed several thousand objects orbiting the planet we're about to attack? It does seem unlikely, sir. Krex stared at the tactical display, which was now showing Earth surrounded by a cloud of objects that definitely hadn't been there an hour ago. What's the assessment of these new contacts? Unknown, sir. They're not emitting any obvious weapon signatures, but they appear to be actively maneuvering into defensive positions. For the first time since the mission began, Admiral Krex felt a small flutter of concern. It was the kind of feeling that intelligent beings get when they realize they may have made a significant miscalculation. Time to target? 37 minutes, sir. Proceed with the attack. Whatever these primitives have managed to cobble together, it can't possibly be a threat to the largest fleet in Coalition history. Back on Earth, Zara Quinn was having the time of her life. She was piloting a fighter that was so advanced it technically wouldn't be invented for another decade, watching an alien fleet that was apparently staffed by beings with the tactical awareness of a particularly slow breakfast cereal. Morrison, this is Quinn. I've been monitoring their communications and I think you need to hear this. Jake's voice came through the comm system. What have you got, Quinn? Sir, they're still referring to us as primitive bipedal primates. I think they actually believe their own intelligence reports. That's either very good for us or very bad for the galaxy's intelligence services. Sir, request permission to begin the educational process. Jake's voice was quiet for a moment. Quinn, you are authorized to begin operation. What the hell are we calling this thing? Rex Boulder's voice boomed over the comm system. Operation Surprise Party, sir. We are not calling it Operation Surprise Party. Operation Cosmic Comeuppance? Fine. Whatever. Quinn, you are authorized to begin whatever Rex is calling this operation. Zara Quinn smiled, and it was the kind of smile that usually preceded someone having a very bad day. Roger that, sir. Beginning Operation Surprise Party. Quinn out. Admiral Krex was admiring the view of Earth on his main display when the universe suddenly decided to teach him a very important lesson about assumptions. The lesson lasted exactly 47 seconds, but it was the kind of educational experience that tends to stick with you, assuming you survive it. Sir, called out the tactical officer, a being whose species had evolved from what appeared to be a nervous breakdown. I'm detecting energy buildups from multiple sources around the Earth system. Probably just their primitive power plants overloading, Krex said dismissively. Continue the approach. That was when Zara Quinn decided to introduce herself. Quinn's experimental fighter, which had been invisible to Coalition sensors up until that moment, suddenly appeared directly in front of the lead Coalition destroyer. The ship, which was roughly the size of a small city, immediately began evasive maneuvers. This would have been impressive, except that it was trying to avoid something that was moving faster than the crew's ability to process what was happening. This is Zara Quinn of the Terran Defense Force, she announced over the Coalition's communication channels. Welcome to Earth space. Please prepare to have your day thoroughly ruined. Quinn's fighter launched what appeared to be 2 small missiles. The Coalition destroyers' point defense systems immediately engaged, shooting down both missiles with contemptuous ease. The crew had approximately 3 seconds to feel smug about this accomplishment before they realized that the missiles hadn't been trying to hit them. The missiles detonated exactly 1 kilometer away from the destroyer, releasing clouds of what the Coalition's sensors identified as metallic debris. This seemed harmless enough, until the debris began moving with purpose and intelligence. "Sir," squeaked a tactical officer, "the debris appears to be some kind of self-replicating nanomachine swarm. It's eating our hull." Admiral Krex watched in fascination as his lead destroyer began dissolving like sugar in acid rain. "How is that possible?" "Unknown, sir. But it's spreading to the other ships in the formation. Back on Earth." "Go on." Dr. Emily Vasquez was monitoring the battle with the kind of professional satisfaction that comes from watching 20 years of theoretical work perform exactly as designed. "Jake, the nanomachine swarm is working perfectly. Quinn just took out 17 ships with 2 missiles." "How is that possible?" Jake asked, echoing Admiral Krex's question from several million kilometers away. "Simple. The nanomachines are programmed to consume any material that matches the composition of Coalition ship hulls. They replicate using the consumed material, then move on to the next target. It's like a virus, but for spaceships." Commander Rex Boulder was practically vibrating with excitement. "Sir, that's just the opening act. Wait until you see what the orbital platforms can do." As if on cue, the first wave of Coalition ships entered Earth's defensive perimeter. What happened next was the kind of thing that would probably be studied in military academies for the next several centuries, assuming there was anyone left to study it. The orbital platforms that had been masquerading as weather satellites suddenly revealed their true nature. They were, in fact, kinetic bombardment systems that could accelerate small projectiles to significant fractions of the speed of light. The platforms opened fire simultaneously, launching what appeared to be a gentle shower of metallic confetti toward the Coalition fleet. "Sir," reported the Coalition's increasingly panicked tactical officer, "multiple objects inbound. They appear to be very small." "How small?" Admiral Krex demanded. "Approximately the size of marbles, sir." Admiral Krex felt a moment of relief. "Marbles? That's their response? Marbles?" The first marble struck the Coalition flagship's shields at roughly 10% of light speed, and the shields, which had been designed to stop energy weapons and conventional missiles, had not been designed to deal with solid objects moving at relativistic velocities. The marble punched through the shields like they were made of tissue paper, then continued through the ship's hull, several decks, and most of the crew quarters before exiting out the other side. "That," said Admiral Krex, "was not a normal marble." The second marble hit the ship's main reactor. The resulting explosion was visible from Earth's surface. Meanwhile, Zara Quinn was having what she would later describe as the most fun I've ever had without breaking any major laws of physics. Her fighter squadron, which consisted of ships that officially didn't exist and pilots who had been trained on equipment that technically wasn't invented yet, was systematically dismantling the Coalition's starboard flank. "Morrison, this is Quinn. I've got visual on their command ship, permission to knock politely." "Quinn, you are authorized to knock however you see fit." "Roger that." Beginning politeness protocol. Quinn's version of knocking politely involved launching a weapon that Dr. Vasquez had called a quantum destabilization torpedo. The torpedo didn't actually destroy its target in any conventional sense. Instead, it convinced the target's atoms that they would be much happier existing in a different dimensional framework. The Coalition dreadnought simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment it wasn't. The only sign that it had ever existed was a brief flash of light and what appeared to be a very confused-looking duck that materialized briefly in the space where the ship had been, then disappeared again. "Quinn," Jake's voice came over the comm. "Did you just turn an alien battleship into a duck?" "Only temporarily, sir. The duck was probably just a side effect of the dimensional displacement. It should revert to its original state in about 6 hours." "Where?" "A saint. That's classified, sir." Back on the Coalition flagship, Admiral Krex was discovering that panic was a remarkably effective cure for meditation crystal addiction. His ship was shaking apart around him, His fleet was being systematically destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist, and his tactical officer had apparently had some kind of nervous breakdown and was now communicating entirely through interpretive dance. Status report. Krex shouted over the sound of hull breaches and exploding control panels. "Sir," gasped Commander Glubb, "we've lost 638 ships in the last 30 seconds. The Earth defenses are using weapons that our sensors can't even classify. I'm reading energy signatures that violate at least 17 known laws of physics." "How many ships do we have left?" "Approximately 200, sir. But that number is decreasing rapidly." "Retreat. Sound the retreat." "Sir, I've been trying to sound the retreat for the past 15 seconds. But our communications array was just eaten by what appears to be a small cloud of very angry metal particles." The final phase of the battle lasted exactly 12 more seconds. The remaining coalition ships, those that were still capable of movement, began attempting to flee. Unfortunately for them, Dr. Vasquez had anticipated this possibility and had prepared what she called departure gifts. The fleeing ships suddenly found themselves surrounded by what appeared to be empty space. This seemed like a good thing, until they realized that the empty space was actually full of invisible mines that became visible only when ships tried to enter hyperspace. The mines didn't explode in any traditional sense. Instead, they created localized gravity wells that pulled the escaping ships back toward Earth. The ships found themselves caught in what physicists would later term a really awkward situation, unable to escape, but also unable to return to the battle because the battle was already over. 47 seconds after the first shot was fired, the Coalition's invasion fleet had been reduced to approximately 300 tons of scrap metal, one very confused duck, and Admiral Krex's flagship, which was still intact mainly because Jake Morrison had specifically ordered it to be spared. "I want at least one of them left alive to tell the story," Jake had said. "Otherwise, nobody's going to believe this actually happened." Admiral Krex was experiencing what psychologists call a moment of profound cognitive dissonance, which is a fancy way of saying that his brain was trying to process information that contradicted everything he thought he knew about the universe. His flagship, the Inevitable Justice, was currently the only intact ship in what had been the largest military fleet in Coalition history. The ship was drifting powerlessly in Earth's orbit, surrounded by debris fields that had recently been 846 of the galaxy's most advanced warships. "Sir," whispered Commander Glubb, who had recovered from his interpretive dance phase, but still looked like he was considering a career change, "we're receiving a communication from the Earth vessels." "Put it through," Krex said, his voice carrying the tone of someone who had just realized that he was probably going to be remembered by history, but not in a good way. The main screen flickered to life, showing Captain Jake Morrison sitting in what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary command center. He was drinking what looked like coffee from a mug that read "World's Most Reluctant Hero," and his expression suggested that he was dealing with a particularly tedious staff meeting rather than the aftermath of an interstellar war. "Admiral Krex," Jake said, his voice carrying just the right amount of casual politeness to be insulting, "I hope you're having a pleasant visit to our solar system." Krex stared at the screen. You destroyed my entire fleet." "Well, technically we disabled your fleet. Most of your ships are just experiencing what our weapons department calls catastrophic existence failure. It's temporary for some of them." "Probably. How is this possible?" "Our intelligence reports indicated that your species was primitive, technologically backward, barely capable of achieving spaceflight." Jake took a sip of his coffee. "Admiral, can I give you some advice about intelligence reports?" What? "Next time you're planning to invade a planet, you might want to make sure your intelligence reports are actually intelligent." "Just a thought." Dr. Emily Vasquez appeared on the screen next to Jake. "Admiral, I'm Dr. Vasquez, Earth's Director of Applied Physics and Theoretical Hostility. We've been monitoring your communications, and I have to say, your understanding of human technology is approximately 80 years out of date." "That's impossible. We've been observing your planet for decades." "Have you? Or have you been observing what we wanted you to observe?" "Let me ask you something, Admiral. When your species first achieved spaceflight, did you immediately broadcast your most advanced military capabilities to the entire galaxy?" Krex paused. "Well, no, exactly. We've been in space for 70 years, Admiral." Did you really think we spent all that time just launching weather satellites and building one space station? The Commander Rex Boulder's head appeared in the frame. Admiral, sir, I'd like to formally thank you for providing us with the most entertaining target practice we've had in decades. Your ship's tactical response was, well, let's just say it was very educational. This is impossible, Krex muttered. The Coalition has been the dominant power in this galaxy for over 1,000 years. We have technology that your species couldn't even comprehend. Jake corrected. You had technology. Most of it is currently floating around Earth orbit in very small pieces. But don't worry, we're planning to clean it up. We're very environmentally conscious. Zara Quinn's voice came over the communication channel. Morrison, this is Quinn. I'm currently escorting the last few Coalition survivors to the designated surrender coordinates. Should I be polite about it? Please be polite, Quinn. These beings have just had a very traumatic educational experience. Roger that, sir. I'll use my indoor voice. Admiral Krex felt something that might have been the beginning of understanding. You were expecting us. Not specifically you, Emily said. But we've been expecting someone like you for about 20 years. We figured that any galactic government would probably be run by bureaucrats who confused paperwork with intelligence and assumed that any species that hadn't contacted them yet must be primitive. So you prepared. Sir, Admiral, we didn't just prepare. We over-prepared. We prepared for scenarios that probably violate the laws of physics in several dimensions. We built weapons that our own scientists weren't sure would work. We created defense systems that make our old Cold War arsenals look like water balloons. Jake leaned forward. Admiral, here's what's going to happen next. You're going to contact your government and inform them that Earth is under no circumstances to be considered a target for military action. You're going to recommend that the Coalition begin diplomatic relations with humanity immediately. And you're going to suggest that they update their intelligence gathering methods because frankly they're embarrassing. And if we refuse? Jake's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Admiral, you just watched us destroy 847 warships in less than a minute. We used maybe 5% of our actual defensive capacity. Do you really want to find out what we can do when we're actually trying? Rex Boulder grinned. Sir, I'd like to point out that we still have about 3,000 weapons systems that didn't get to participate in today's festivities. They're feeling a bit left out. That won't be necessary, Rex. Are you sure, sir? Because I've got a whole list of things we haven't tested yet, and the engineering department is really excited about the new. Rex. Yes, sir. Admiral Krex looked around his damaged bridge, at his traumatized crew, and at the debris field that had recently been the Coalition's proudest achievement. I'll contact the Coalition immediately. Excellent, Jake said. Oh, and Admiral, next time you want to visit Earth, maybe try calling ahead. We're much friendlier when we're not being invaded. The screen went dark, leaving Admiral Krex alone with the wreckage of his career and the uncomfortable realization that the galaxy was about to become a very different place. 3 months after what historians would eventually call the 47-Second War, Captain Jake Morrison was sitting in his office, reading reports that made him question the fundamental nature of intelligence in the universe. The first report was from the Galactic Coalition's newly formed Department of Human Relations, which was apparently staffed by beings who had spent the last several weeks frantically trying to figure out how to apologize for attempting to commit genocide. Their initial diplomatic overture had been a formal apology written in 17 different languages, followed by a gift basket containing what appeared to be meditation crystals, and a pamphlet titled, "So You've Been Defeated by a Primitive Species, a Self-Help Guide." The second report was from Dr. Emily Vasquez, who had been appointed as Earth's first ambassador of applied intimidation. Her job was to politely explain to various galactic governments why attacking Earth would be a poor life choice. Jake, Emily said, walking into his office with the kind of smile that usually preceded something either brilliant or terrifying, "You need to see the latest communication from the Coalition. Please tell me they're not asking for their ships back." "No, they've officially written those off as a learning experience." "Yeah. They're asking if we'd be interested in joining the Coalition as a founding member of something they're calling the New Galactic Order." Jake blinked. "They want us to join the government we just defeated. Apparently, so The Coalition Council has concluded that any species capable of destroying their entire military in under a minute probably has some valuable insights to offer regarding galactic security. That's actually fairly logical. It gets better. They're also offering to make Earth the headquarters of the Coalition's new military strategic planning division. They want us to plan their military strategy. Jake, I think they want us to be their military strategy. The Coalition has apparently realized that spending 1,000 years meditating and filing paperwork isn't actually very good preparation for dealing with hostile species. The Commander Rex Boulder burst through the door with his usual enthusiasm. Captain Morrison, sir. I've just received the most incredible news. The Coalition is asking if we'd be interested in providing military training to their forces. Rex, please tell me you didn't volunteer us to train 800 different alien species how to fight. Sir, I may have suggested that we could help them develop more effective tactical doctrines. Also, I may have mentioned that we have a lot of weapons we haven't tested yet and could use some volunteers. Jake rubbed his temples. Rex, we can't use alien soldiers as test subjects for experimental weapons. Why not, sir? They volunteered. They volunteered to be test subjects? Well, they volunteered to receive human military training. I just explained that our training involves testing new equipment under realistic conditions. Emily laughed. Jake, you should see the application backlog. We've got over 200 species requesting admission to what Rex is calling the Human Military Academy for beings who want to learn good and do other stuff good too. Please tell me that's not the actual name. That's the actual name. Rex submitted it as the official designation. In my defense, Rex said, I thought it was catchy. Jake's communication console chimed. Captain Morrison. This is Quinn. I'm currently providing escort services for a Coalition diplomatic mission. They're requesting permission to enter Earth space. What kind of diplomatic mission? Sir, it appears to be approximately 50 ships carrying what they're calling tribute payments and apology gifts. Also, the lead ambassador is requesting an audience with whoever is responsible for what they're calling the terrifying human military doctrine of aggressive friendship. Aggressive friendship? That's what they're calling our tendency to completely destroy enemy forces and then immediately offer to help them rebuild. Apparently, it's psychologically devastating to their war planners. Emily grinned. Jake, we've accidentally created a new form of psychological warfare. We're so aggressively helpful after defeating enemies that entire civilizations are having existential crises about the nature of conflict. Sir, Quinn's voice continued, the tribute includes what appears to be the entire contents of several planetary treasuries, advanced technology from 37 different species, and something called a Galactic Peace Prize that they apparently just invented specifically to give to us. They invented an award just to give it to us? Yes, sir. The inscription reads, to the human species, for services to galactic peace through overwhelming force and confusing kindness. Jake stared at the wall for a long moment. Are we the good guys or the bad guys in this situation? Sir, Rex said thoughtfully, I think we might be both. We're the bad guys who are so good at being bad guys that everyone wants us to be the good guys. That's actually somewhat profound, Rex. Thank you, sir. I've been taking philosophy classes. Emily pulled up a holographic display showing a map of the galaxy. Jake, look at this. Since word spread about the 47-second war, we've had 17 different species surrender to us preemptively. They're not even at war with us. They just want to surrender before we have a reason to fight them. What are we supposed to do with 17 preemptive surrenders? I've been thinking about that. What if we accept their surrenders, but instead of conquering them, we just protect them? You want us to become a protection service for the galaxy? Think about it. Everyone's terrified of us, but they also know we're reasonable. We could create a system where species pay us to protect them from other threats. It's like insurance, but with more explosions. Quinn's voice crackled through the comm again. Sir, I'm getting additional reports. The Zorblaxian Empire has just declared war on the Crystalline Collective, and both sides are requesting human arbitration. Also, the Tentacle Alliance is asking if we'd be interested in mediating their territorial dispute with the geometric beings. They want us to be galactic referees? It appears so, sir. Apparently, the galaxy has decided that since we're the only species capable of ending any conflict decisively, we should be the ones preventing conflicts from starting. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Earth's orbital defense platforms, which were now being toured daily by delegations from hundreds of different species. So let me get this straight. 3 months ago, we were an unknown primitive species. Now we're apparently the galaxy's military instructors, strategic planners, peacekeepers and arbitrators. Don't forget landlords, Emily added. The Coalition is also asking if they can rent office space on Earth for their new headquarters. They want to rent office space from us. Prime real estate. Apparently. Being located on the homeworld of the species that redefined galactic warfare is considered a significant status symbol. Rex was practically bouncing with excitement. Sir, this is incredible. We're not just part of the galactic community, we're running it. Rex, we're not running anything. We're just accidentally in charge of everything. Is there really a difference, sir? Jake considered this. You know what? I think you might be right. Quinn, tell the diplomatic mission they have permission to enter Earth space. Emily, draft a response to the Coalition's offers. Tell them we're interested in joining their new galactic order, but we have some conditions. What conditions? First, we want veto power over any military actions. Second, we want oversight of all interspecies conflicts. Third, we want the right to reorganize their entire governmental structure if we think it's inefficient. Jake, those aren't conditions. That's basically asking them to let us rule the galaxy. Emily, they're offering to let us rule the galaxy. I'm just making sure we do it properly. Rex saluted it enthusiastically. Sir, should I begin preparations for the Human Galactic Administration? Rex, we're not calling it that. How about the Terran Cosmic Management Initiative? Rex. Endo, the Earth-based Universal Improvement Project. Jake sighed. You know what? Fine. But we're going to need a bigger office. As the first Coalition tribute ships entered Earth's atmosphere, Jake Morrison realized that humanity had somehow managed to accidentally become the galaxy's reluctant but highly effective overlords. It wasn't the future anyone had planned for, but given that the alternative had been extinction, he decided he could live with being the galaxy's most aggressively helpful dictators. After all, someone had to keep the universe running properly, and apparently that someone was them.